Honor to meet you, man. I was already a fan of Killadelphia before, but then I didn't know your full scope of work. And I started watching some interviews with you, and I was like, holy shit, like this is a lot of stuff. It was amazing. It's amazing.
Really appreciate that.
I applaud you, man. It's awesome. And then it's kind of cool that you did all this and you came back to comics. So I love that too, because that's my passion. I don't know if they told you who I am or my background. I own a comic book shop here in Miami, but I'm a comic book creator, and I also create my own comics, and I have my own company called Creature Entertainment. And so we do comics, and then we do the comics at the same time. We got this little studio set up, and I did it in my hometown in Hialeah, which is full of Cubans. And they're like, comic book shop in Hialeah, that'll never work. And we just got awarded best comic book shop in Miami.
Wow. So, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So I was like, I'm like, all right, after 6 years, something's working.
There you go.
And so I have my studio in the back here of the shop. So occasionally if you hear rumbling, it's we're open today. We're open 7 days a week. So I have customers that come in and ask things, even if I'm in my office. Cool. But do we just start, or are we waiting for anything?
Yeah, no. We can start. Yeah.
Great. I don't know if we need to do an intro, or, I mean, I just don't know.
It's on you. It's on you. Right, you're the boss here.
Oh, wow. All right. That's a little heavy. Let me make sure my volume is up so I can hear you good. All right. Yeah, and I'm working off my phone too. We have a little dog that stays here sometimes, and I found out he chewed my cord from my laptop. So I'm just like, hey, way to go, Peanut. Thanks. So I guess I want to say, okay, thank you so much, Rodney Barnes, for being here, for talking to us and schedule and everything else. I mean, I don't know where to start. I mean, obviously, one thing I will start off at is Killadelphia. I had to pick up. It's funny. I always liked the book. I read the first issue, and then after the first issue, I never got to read it again because it kept selling out here in the shop, which is the biggest curse.
That's a good reason. That's a good reason. Yes, I'll take that.
It's like a Twilight Zone episode, though. It's like I got a comic book shop, but I don't get to read comics because they sell out.
Yes.
But I was able to get the graphic novel, and I got to read it, and it was such a good ride, man. And I just read the 17. I had to pick up this issue because I'm a big fan of Kent Williams. Ever since he did his Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown, I was a huge fan. So that's some beautiful stuff on there. But not only that, you worked on the Boondocks, Runaways, Wu-Tang. For Marvel, you did Falcon, Quincredible for Lion Forge. What else is there? You worked on everything from, you were a PA on Blade.
I was. My first job.
You worked on Everybody Hates Chris, which I'm just getting on board on that too. I've had a lot of comedian friends that tell me like, oh, you gotta watch this. This is such good writing. Again, as a writer, as a comic book creator, I love sitcoms. And so when I hear there's a really good one, I'm like, I gotta watch it. So I need that. And then, you also worked on Army of Darkness 1979. That was so good, man. I dug it so much. I was like, I didn't even know it was you. And then I saw the credit and I go, yeah, I read that. And I went back and I was like, oh man, because I was really, and I'm really like the Ash books, I'm off and on. And when I read that one, I was like, it felt like the Warriors. It felt like
that was the goal. That was the goal. Yes.
It was like that great stuff. I gotta read your Cloak and Dagger. I'm a huge Cloak and Dagger fan. It's like that era of Marvel was like my biggest fun. But yeah, it was just awesome stuff. And you worked with everybody from David Wayans to Aaron McGruder. That's just awesome. Like, again, your scope is amazing, man. I applaud you. It's amazing. So with all that, one thing I wanted to talk about is, this is a classic question, but how did this start for you? How was it that you got into writing or comics, or what came first, or origin story?
That's a good question. It always changes when I tell these stories, but I'm from Annapolis, Maryland. And, when I graduated high school, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't see a bridge from Maryland to Hollywood. And it just felt like a fantasy. And, as I started to sort of look at my life, probably 4 or 5 years post high school and some college, it was like, okay, when are you going to get serious and do something? And I tried, working a regular gig, and this thing just kept nagging me. I describe it like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind for anybody over 40 that's seen that movie. And
You were there with the
itching. Yes. And I just was itching to do something creative with my life. So I went back to school at Howard University and studied communication, film, radio, TV, and film. And I started working on movies as a production assistant and assistant director on non-union stuff. And, it was things like The Pelican Brief, Forrest Gump, Major League 2, Clear and Present Danger, just worked on a bunch of movies. Then finally I worked on a movie, Major Payne, in Virginia with Damon Wayans. And Damon asked me what I wanted to do with my career. And I hadn't really thought about it to the degree that I think I should have been thinking about it, because it's still in the back of my mind. It didn't feel real. I was happy just to be working on movies. And when I told him I wanted to be a writer, he sort of took an interest in me. He let me work on a bunch of stuff that he worked on, and then eventually told me I had to move to LA if I was going to take it seriously. And that was terrifying to me because I only knew Maryland. And I packed up my stuff. I moved to LA. I lived in my car for like 8 months. And, in and out of odd jobs. And then eventually I got the job on Blade, and other jobs followed. Worked on the Green Mile. I was Michael Clark Duncan stand-in, even though we looked nothing alike. And had some really cool gigs, but then finally sort of settled in and started to take the craft seriously. And got a call one day from Damon. Yeah, I'll come out in a second. I got a call from Damon, and he gave me a gig as a punch-up writer for one day on my wife and kids. And I turned one day into a career. I just kept coming back, even for free. And eventually they hired me officially, and I did the run of that show. And that just started a journey. That just started a thing. And from that point forward, I haven't stopped working, really. Yeah.
I mean, and this is as a writer. I mean, that is something I'm interested in knowing. Do you think it's still true that you need to be in LA if you want to work in this business, or now with the internet?
I think, the world is different. I mean, I think it's according to what you want to do. And I don't know, when I say the world is different, it's not just technology, it's also COVID as well. You have a lot of people working from Zoom. I mean, I'm on the Untitled Lakers series. I'm executive producer and writer on that. And that's where I am right now. And, for a year, we did our last writing from home. We worked via Zoom. So I don't know if the same rules applied as they did in 95, 96 when I came out here. So, I think the world is different now. Technology makes it different in the sense that you can do anything. You have the internet, to sell your wares, and, it's just a different world.
Yeah, everybody's doing something somewhere. I was in El Paso, Texas, and it was really cool to see these young guys running around with an iPhone on a holder with a boom mic.
Yeah.
And their little films there. And I just talked to them for a second, and it's like, it's true. When we were coming out, I'm 43. So when I went to college, I remember the broadcast cameras like this, and it's $1,000 camera, and who has the money for that? And people were still filming in film stock. Now everybody's doing stuff on a phone. It's amazing.
Yeah. The world's different, man.
Oh yeah. It's an amazing advancement. One thing I was going to ask, like, one of the things I noticed that a classic thing is going to be like, how do you make it as a writer, or what do you do? But I saw that in some interviews you said about make it personal, finding your voice. Now, in that process, it's funny because I know that a lot of people want to hear the silver bullet, the amazing one bit of advice that will answer everything. But in that, how do you get to that point of finding your voice as a writer?
There was always, back when, I had a teacher in the 8th grade told me that if I ever decided to stop being a class clown and focus on writing, I could be a good writer. And it stuck in the back of my head. And there was a type of material I always responded to. When I was a kid, it was Richard Matheson and it was Stephen King. Those were my two kind of guys in literature. But then there was also in comic books, Alan Moore, Frank Miller, same Neil Gaiman, guys that a lot of people love. But when I would try to write my early stuff, I would try to imitate those guys. And we're talking early Alan Moore was very prosy with the Swamp Thing stuff and Miracle Man and books like that. And I used to write like that. And over time, when I developed, I guess, the wherewithal to start to try to find my voice, that influence still sort of lingered in there somewhat. If you really look at Killadelphia and how I write it, you can see influences from a bunch of people and a bunch of different things. And I had to learn from comics, reverse engineering it, because I started in television and film first, and then started in comics. And usually, more often than not, the stories I hear, it's the other way around. But mostly just because I love comic books so much. But with each medium, I sort of figured out what it is I do best and to apply to that. And, like you said in other interviews that I've said, that I don't think Hollywood buys writers, it buys voices. And if you look at certain people, take Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele is like a modern day Hitchcock. There's a certain pattern to how he presents his material. And it's not predictable. It's original. It's his own voice. It's its own thing. And you can go down down the line of a lot of creative folks, and you just see that they each do a different thing. It's kind of like if you were to look at that from a commerce place and you went into a store, you see people present, say, sneakers, for example, and you have Nikes, you have Pumas, you have Converse, you have whatever. They're all shoes, but they all have a different style and they all have a different way. And, more often than not, we're looking for what appeals to a mass audience. And so once I kind of got my legs under me and I figured out what it is that appealed to me, I think it's easier once you figure it out for you, it's easier to present it in a more confident way to present to other people. When I first started writing comics, though, because Falcon was my first gig, and I was terrified because I had no idea what I was doing. It's different reading comics than writing comics. And I thought I knew because, I write TV shows. This shouldn't be that hard. And it was really hard because I wanted it to work. And I think I was writing more extrinsically than intrinsically. And it took me 3 or 4 issues to figure out what I wanted to do and what I really wanted to say. I knew my plotting, I knew where I wanted to go, but I had to give it the same due diligence that I did television and every other thing that I've done up until this point.
Okay. Yeah, because I so on an interview, you talk about doing a lot of drafts. And that's something like I related that because I do a couple of classes here from Miami-Dade College, and I tell a lot of times, I think it was James Joyce who said it. It was like somebody who said that 80% of good writing was editing.
Yeah.
It was just back and just writing it again. And when I say that to students, they look at me like,
yeah, I just turned in a feature screenplay Saturday to New Regency, and I looked on the last version. I did 77 drafts of
wow.
And I'm sure there's more to go when they come back with notes for what they want. So yeah, a lot of drafts.
Artists too. You better love being at a drafting table. You better love drawing because when they come back and say, well, the arm needs to be this way, and and you better be like, yay, I got to draw it again, because gonna be a problem.
Yes, definitely.
So in this sometimes as like when we talk about like those approaches and everything, is there anything different so from when you go into, say, comedy or against a drama, or is your approach always the same in those kind of genres?
Yeah, I don't think the genre really, if I know the story I'm trying to tell, I'm just telling a story. That story could be funny, horrifying, a mystery, or whatever. All I need to know is the story, the direction I'm trying to go in. I think for me, I don't look at it so much as a comedy as I do particular characters are funny or they have a sense of humor. And once I figure out what's under that sense of humor, why are they why do they have a sense of humor? Then I just go, you know. There's a simple math, I think, to most characters, and that happens in a psychological space. If I understand how they think, and their humor fits what it is that I do or understand, you know, I can write to their voice. I look at it more like that than I do differentiating genres. Yeah.
Yeah, because Killadelphia has some great humor in it. There's some parts there. This is a horror book, and it's like what's going on is like, oh crap, this is horrible. It was really, there was some funny takes. What I like too is that you got to the point so fast in the series, and that it was just refreshing because it wasn't like, are there vampires? Is there vampires? What does it mean? No one's sitting there going like, does sunlight hurt them? Like, no, like it got to the point, and so you got to enjoy the book so much faster. And I always tell people, to me, a good comic book is when you want to read the next one.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. I mean, I think for me, there's so many vampire books that have been done. There's so many, frankly, stories, that my thing was, okay, slowing this thing down won't work. And I wanted to get to the hook anyway. So, and I never looked at it like the core of the book is really about vampires, because there's so much other stuff. And Jason always says the thing that hooked him was my pitch. And my pitch to him was, it's Hamilton meets Dracula meets Sanford and Son. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so, and I think it still lives kind of in that space, because you have historical figures, you have vampirism, but you also have a father and son, where the father is sort of a grumpy guy who, you know, from time to time will take a shot at his son. So, yeah, that's the math of it.
It's funny too, because sometimes even if you go and say, oh, this is an African-American father and son, it really translates. Like for me, was my relationship with my father in a lot of, so I was just like, yeah, that's a dad and son. I know that I know very well.
That's the goal. The goal is to, you know, to be authentic, but also to be authentic in a way that speaks to the nature of the relationship, not necessarily the nature of the ethnicity. There are some nuance and specific things when it comes to, you know, the race of the characters, but I try to put that within the context of the story, and the nature of the relationship is the thing that I think is universal. You know, there's a father and son, there's a husband and wife, there are sisters, there are people that are connected to each other in familiar dynamics and constructs. And so to me, that's the strength of the book, and it's a place where I find confidence, because I can speak to the nature of that in my life and try to come from an authentic place, rather than trying to force it or to try to be cool, because I'm not cool. And I only know what I know, and which is my own experience. So I try to write from that, but I also am cognizant that, you know, there is a universal theme. If you have kids, there are things that come with that, pro and con. And if I can speak to that, hopefully I can hook someone.
How do you feel about that, being an African-American, as a fan, and then as a writer, and now as a producer? How do you feel like, you know, everything's changed now? Because a lot of times right now we're talking about representation a lot. We're talking about those kind of things. How do you feel like that, how that plays now in the industry, being in comics or film or what have you?
I think that, of course, I think it's a good thing that different groups that have been underserved are getting served, for lack of a better way to put it. I think that's good. I also think it's good that we have a lot of different voices. I look at that more so than I look at just the ethnicity of the characters. You know, you have some books that speak directly to the LGBTQ community. You have, you know, or speak to women, or speak to, you know, people of color. And that's great. Under that, though, I still look to the craft. And I think as more of those groups begin to get their feet under them, you'll see a lot more craft, a lot more diversity within how stories are told. I try my best when I'm dealing with characters who come from a different group that aren't part of the dominant culture. I try to still speak to them as human beings first, and that category that they're in, that only comes up as it applies to their life. I don't try to lead with that. You know, you see what they are, or they say what they are, and how they behave, but that's not just who they are. There are a lot more dimensions to these characters, and I try to present those as much as I do the human dimensions and the things that connect us, more so than the things that sort of categorize us, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, like I said, when I saw like the father and son relationship in Killadelphia, it just reminded me of my father and myself. I always think in those kind of stories, like if you know, a mom is a mom is a mom, you know, dad, and those like exist in everything. Like if you went to an Asian family or Mexican family or what have you, it was always the same thing. Maybe there's differences in the language, culture, approach, else, but it is something that's so. How does it feel like to write for something, or how's your approach in writing for something that's, let's say, an IP? Because you've handled like Star Wars, you did the Lando series, which was awesome. Also, I know I talked to other writers like Alex Segura. He wrote Pull Dammer Freefall, and Delilah Dawson from Galaxy's Edge. I did an interview with them, and they, you know, told me all these different parts of like writing from the Bible, of like what they have and what planets they can use and everything. How is your take on something like
the same?
I've
got an IG-88 book that's coming out on the 20th. The 20th of October, the same day as Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog, and a Mandalorian book that's coming a little later this year too.
Yeah, we ordered your Nita Hawes. We ordered plenty at our store.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it in advance. It's what you said. You know, there are a lot of boxes to check because you got a lot of different folks that are involved. It's a good thing. I mean, I also write James Bond for Dynamite as well, and with Army of Darkness. And the thing to me is, you know, I'm always trying to get better as a writer, and all of these the books that you mentioned all have a different tone or voice. You know, they're all wildly, Army of Darkness is different than is way different than anything that I've ever approached in my life. And to me, if I can go from the Killadelphia world, which is very specific, to Star Wars, to Cloak and Dagger, to James Bond, to, you know, all of these other things, I don't get lazy and I don't get bored. You know, it's like I still have to think. I still have to put myself, because one of the pitfalls with doing a lot of different projects is deadlines. You know, I'm always up against a deadline, and I never want to get to that place where I'm just dialing it in to meet the deadline. And so with all of these different projects, I have to think. And with the Star Wars world, you really have to think, because once you think you have a great idea, that somebody's going to tell you, no, we're doing that over here, because they do so many books and they have so many TV shows and movies and things that you can't step on what somebody else is doing. So you're always trying to find something that's original and a different way, and you know, it really keeps you on your toes. But I love the world. I love the people that I'm working with, and I always get excited because I remember as a kid seeing Star Wars, and I'm an Empire Strikes Back guy. But
me too.
You know, yeah, that's sort of just.
I'm a kind of a Jedi guy, but I was a little kid. I saw it in a movie theater. I like Ewoks. That's my problem.
Yes. I love them too. I had a big Ewok doll. I'm not ashamed to say it. I would probably watch Return the least amount of all of them when they come on Turner.
Loop to me.
Yeah, but I love the world, and to be able to play in it a little bit is an honor. And I hope they keep calling me, and I hope I keep doing work that hopefully is worthy of this thing we love.
Yeah, my first, I guess, kind of thrill to have in the comic book shop was we have our TV in the front and everything else, and I sometimes put Empire Strikes Back playing, because growing up, I remember being at a crappy comic book shop, and they had the little TV with the video cassette right under it inside the TV, and they would come play some bootleg Empire Strikes Back tape while you're picking out your comics. So to me, that's like home. That's like my home world and everything. Yes. So then the other thing I wanted to ask you, is there anything you wouldn't write or is taboo for you or something that you wouldn't approach, or somebody approached you with it, you would say, nah, pass?
I'm sure there is. I don't know off the top of my head what that would be. I think anything that would slander anyone or purposefully like denigrate someone or group or that type of thing. You know, anything like that. Controversial for controversy's sake. I think at this point in my career and in my life, I want to do things that people can enjoy in a layered way. That's sort of I think life itself is difficult enough for people right now that I wouldn't want to add to anyone else's misery or woes. I would prefer to just keep doing the things that I love and it seems like other people love as well, and hopefully bring some good stuff to the world.
Okay. Now, so one of the things I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think about like the industry, mostly the comic book industry, being a comic book shop and also an independent creator? I wanted to ask, what do you think of the health of the comic book industry right now? Like in the sense,
it's funny because I don't know. I hear different things. I hear every day the industry's dead, and then I hear that it's better than ever. It's according to who you talk to, what day of the week you're talking to them. I started my own imprint from Zombie Love Studios, and it's, you know, I'm entering the fray as well in an official way, and you know, I hope. I don't think anyone, at least I don't know them, gets into comics to get rich, because that's not really what it's for, and that's not how it's built. You do this because you love it, and as long as there's that type of feeling or emotion that's under the motivation as to why we do this, I think it will survive. The thing that I think I'm disappointed in is when I was a kid, I loved comic books because they were everywhere. Yeah. They were 20 cents, they were a quarter. And I could go to my corner store, every liquor store, every convenience store had, you know, the spiral, the spindle rack of comics. And they were such a part of my life. And now it feels like it's sort of a subculture because they're $4 a piece. You got to go to a specialty shop just to get them. And as much as I love those shops and shops like yours, it's like I dig them, but I wish kids had more access to them, you know, just randomly. I just wish it was a part of like it was with my life, like they were just a regular part of my reading. And I got them from the library, I got them from the store, but they were a big part of keeping me away from, you know, the negative elements in the world that, you know, I was a part of. I had comic books and I just loved them. And it was nothing better on a Sunday to read a big stack of comic books. And I could have a big stack of comic books for $5-10. And all I had to do was like cut 4 lawns and I was good. And now it's a major, an adult has to take you there and buy them for you and be a part of the process. And a lot of kids don't have that. They don't have that outlet. And I remember when I was doing Falcon or maybe another book, maybe it's Incredible, I was talking to kids in the school and they'd never seen a comic book before.
Yeah.
And they were in elementary school and they were like 5th or 6th graders. But I remember in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, teachers had to take them away from me. I was hiding them. I was figuring out how to put them in textbooks and act like I was reading a book and really was reading Neil Adams' Green Lantern. And, you know, but there was something about that I think helped really galvanize that love that I'd had with reading in general.
What's funny now is that I noticed that for me as a comic book shop, like I don't funnel too much to kids anymore because these little kids at 5, 6, 8 years old, they're all on their iPads. But then a 17-year-old kid walking, going, "Do you have any Bronze Age?"
Right.
Like looking for Ragman or Moon Knight or Tomb of Dracula. I'm like, what do you know about Tomb of Dracula? And they have comics. Like they don't even like the 90s stuff. You can't show them Youngblood and they'll be excited. Like a kid, Youngblood, like, oh man, who are these guys? Now they get it and they just kind of like, they just want to see that older stuff. And they want to they're super excited for that at 17, 18.
Yeah.
Now like taking place, like collecting records. You know, everybody gets MP3s and they can just get Spotify and just download it, but if you really want to listen to it, you got to get a record.
Exactly.
So in the same thing. So tell me a little bit about Zombie Love. Like, what are you approaching? I heard that you're going to do Substack also, but
I have a Substack. Subscribe now. I have a Substack, and it's connected to the Killadelphia world. It's more spinoff stuff from Killadelphia initially. And the big thing for me was there were stories I wanted to tell, some 5-pagers, some 10-pagers, some other stuff that I wanted to do that was a little bit outside of the norm for the traditional books, one-offs with some of the characters from Killadelphia, just different things that I wanted to do. And Substack gave me the opportunity, so I jumped at it. There's short stories, prose, art, just a bunch of different things. And that's the Substack part of it. And it's also a way of keeping connected to the people who like what I do in a more personal way. I think with Zombie Love, it's a little bit different because I'm doing right now. It's 3 projects that we're in the midst of doing. One is Blackula, licensed Blackula from MGM Studios, and
Nice.
So I'm doing a run of Blackula now. It's only going to be softcover and hardcover trades. It's not going to be monthly floppies. But I've got that. I've got a book, Florence and Normandy. It's an alien attack story. The story's by myself and the rapper Exhibit. And
oh, that's so cool.
Doing that now. And I have another book, a ghost story, Crownsville. It's set in the first Black mental asylum in America that happens to be in my hometown. And it's set in present day, but some of the events are more historical, sort of that same tone of Killadelphia, but it's a ghost story. And hopefully every month, there'll be a book, and there may be a podcast that goes with the book, and just working on, different ways of having fun with this, really, going beyond just comics in and of themselves, but making it more interactive and really connecting with the audience and having fun. Again, I look at podcasts in general, like I love Dateline. And that should tell you my age. I love Dateline and 48 Hours and those shows and the shows on ID.
Yeah.
It's like those are the stories I like to write. Those are the stories I like to tell. Those are the stories I'm intrigued by. People ask me all the time, why horror? Why supernatural? And I'm like, well, no pun intended. There's stakes involved. It's like life and death. That's a very primal idea. But when you add a supernatural element into it, you sort of change the rules because it's not like cops and robbers. So it's fun to me.
That's awesome. That sounds great. Anything you can tell me about Blackula? Anything more? Because I didn't know that you officially licensed it. I know you mentioned it in another podcast, and my friend goes, "Oh, what else is he doing?" And I'm like, "He might be doing something with Blackula." Everybody was like, "What?" Like he was.
Yes. No, Blackula is. I'm picking up from where the original story ended. Because they had Blackula and then Blackula Scream as well. And that'll come, right now, I think the licensing agreement is for 5 years. So I'll probably do a book a year. But the first book is basically, if you remember the Blackula movie, Prince Mamuwalde left Africa to come to Transylvania to ask Dracula to help him with the slave trade. And instead of helping him, Dracula made him into Blackula, gave him the name Blackula and made him into a vampire. The first story becomes like a revenge story of where Blackula wants revenge on Dracula for turning him and basically ruining his life. And to me, it was a no-brainer because even as a kid, when in the first movie, he goes to South Central and some antique thing, his coffin is shipped to South Central. And he gets out and he puts on a cape and he starts chasing around a woman that looks like his wife and bites some people, and then he just kind of goes away. And my thing was, if somebody made me a vampire, I would want revenge. If I had a life and I had some stuff, and it's a very basic instinct that I think a primal thing. And I love those stories anyway. You know, Kill Bill's one of my favorite movies. You know, you just want revenge. And on that journey of revenge, there's some evolution in how he thinks, how he sees the world. There's a new world, even from the world of the 1970s that he last knew. And I think, hope that, you know, fans have a lot of fun with it. And it's doing an homage to the film, but also, I think, evolving him to today's world as well. Did we freeze?
A little bit. No, I just went to slow motion. That was weird.
Oh, okay. I don't know how that happened, but yeah,
like,
our Wi-Fi here isn't the best, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great to hear. Now, when you're dealing with something that's like, let's say you're writing something that's based on the truth, like you're working on this Lakers, the unnamed Lakers. You worked on Tiger Woods. How does that work? Because how much can you dramatize, or how much can you, or do you work right off it? I mean, how does that work for you?
It's according to what the source material is. If you have the person, it's easy because the person can kind of dictate how they want the story to be told. With the Lakers and with Tiger Woods, they're both based on books. So we have source material. And with the Lakers, in the case of the Lakers, virtually everyone has written a book. So it's public domain. So they're basically, they told their story. We're just combining it and telling another story. And because it's sports and everyone's seen it, we know who wins and loses. You know, it's more of getting into the intricacies of their lives and their relationships, and you know, hopefully being able to do honor and justice to, you know, these great legacies that both the aforementioned Tiger Woods and the Lakers have left us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one thing I get a lot of questions about, and it's funny because it's mostly, again, young writers that ask me, but they get worried about backlash. Like, they talk about Twitter, they talk about social media. If you write this, say this, if you do this and everything, how do you feel, or how do you address it?
That's a great question. When I did Falcon, I remember there was this guy on Twitter. I was in the movie The Post, Tom Hanks movie. And I remember my phone was going off in my hand. It just kept buzzing. And it was Twitter. And there was this one guy, and he was screen capturing dialogue that he hated from Falcon. And he just kept posting it over and over and commenting, and just, he was killing me. He was killing me. Ruin had one of the worst weekends of my life just with this guy. And it really, really bothered me initially. And then when I was able to kind of step back from my feelings and look at what was under his criticism, he was absolutely right. You know, I was writing a television show. I wasn't writing a comic. And I was able to take the part of his critique and move the venom to the side to see what was legitimate. And I think it served me well. I actually think somewhere within the criticism, I was able to course correct. And I think the last 4 or 5 books were better than the first 3. Because of that, I would shake that guy's hand if I knew who he was in real life. I'm not going to go looking for him. But, you know, if one day we meet, he said, hey, I saw this interview and I heard you say that, and I'm that guy. You know, I think, I hate to say it, it comes with the territory. You know, it's like, it's a part of the chance that you take in making anything creative, is that people could hate it. And that's across, you can make a TV show and someone hates it. You can make a movie and someone hates it. And what's Rotten Tomatoes do? You know, as soon as a movie comes out, it's either, you know, a fresh tomato or it's a rotten tomato.
Yeah.
And you have to, if you're entering into this arena, you take a chance on people not loving what you do. You get tougher over time. You know, I think, and with confidence, I think that toughness becomes confidence, that, you know, if it's good to you and it sort of settles into your heart, you gave your best effort and you're happy with it, you have to take a chance that someone may not feel the same way. And it never feels good, ever. But to me, it's also humbled me to, you know, there was a time when I used to be critical of other works before I got into the business. Oh, I hate this thing. I hate that thing. I hate whatever. Once you go down the road of actually making something, it humbles you. It's not as easy as it seems. And that humility, I think, also has made me a better person as well. So again, jump into it. I think you will have more respect for your fellow creators. And I think over time, if you respect the business and you give your best effort, I believe more good things will happen than bad things, but bad things may happen. And when I say bad, it's relative. I think we're talking about feelings. And, you know, hey, comes with the territory.
Yeah. Nah, and it's true what you're saying about once you make something, because I tell, again, my students, but I've also, this is something I remember being in Artist Alley and all these once you see somebody that the guy who made the comic book, like the guy who made one comic book, we used to be like, now you're like, even if it's a bad book, even if it's, you're like, all right, you're cool because you made one, you know, like you know the pain, you went through it, you went and printed it, you blew money, there's boxes of it in your house, all right, you're cool. Like, you know, and now like it might not be good, it might not be my cup of tea, but you're cool, and then from there you move on. So that is wonderful. How are we doing in time? I'm enjoying myself way too much. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
I can go a little more.
Okay. Let me see, what else was I going to ask, because there's so many other things, like when, like, let's say like working in a writer's room, how does that work? Like, when is it always just you as a writer, or you've been on other shows and everything else where you're in, how does that work
in movies? In movies, it's typically just you. On television shows, there's a writer's room. Sometimes there are a lot of writers. Sometimes there's a few writers. On the Lakers show, there are a few. And you know, I think for me, as I get older, I prefer a few, because the more people, it's more personalities, and it's more fitting getting that thing to teamwork. That's the thing, but I enjoy it. I enjoy working with people. And I think that it also exposes you to different types of thought processes. If you kind of live in your own bubble and you think your way is the only way, or your perspective is the only perspective, when you get around other people and you learn what matters to them, I can say, you know, I come from a certain world, I'm in my 50s, and I'm used to growing up in a world where people see things one way. And in Maryland is way different than, you know, the way it works in California. And having been able to, you know, work with people from wildly different experiences, it broadens your experience as a human being. And you begin to appreciate other people and other people's differences, because you get to know them on a personal level. It's not just like a macro thing that you see it in a TV show or you read it in a book. Up close and personal, you get to see other people. And I think that that has helped me more often than not as a person, just being able to interact with different people from different walks of life. So, and be creative with them and make things with them. So yeah, I prefer, I don't have any one particular way in this COVID era. I do like working at home. I don't want COVID. So yeah, but still I'm working with other people just in a Zoom, like we're talking right now.
Okay.
I don't have to wear a mask. It's not far away though. My mask is across the room, but yeah.
And then, so if you're on set as a writer, how does that work?
Yeah, it's mostly in the capacity as a producer, but we get tested every day. And in order for us to get on set, we have to show, they send us a thing to our phones that said we've cleared. And we show that to the guy, and he gives us a little wristband, and we go in.
Okay. Well, I'm talking more about the process. So is it more about being on set, and let's say an actor delivers a line a certain way, or or they want to deliver it a certain way? Do they go to you and chime it in, or how does that work on a set? And so
as a producer, you know, you get, more often than not, what happens is you're working with a scene, and I'm working with a director, and you can look at the scene when it's going through rehearsal, and it either works or it doesn't work. And because theoretically in a script, you can write anything. That doesn't mean it's going to work when it's up, when the actors are saying the words out of their mouth. And you just go, and we had a scene the other day with the actor that plays Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he was Johnson on a thing, and we needed more words. We needed more words as to what he was trying to teach him and show him. And right then, we came up with the words. We'd actually had them in another draft and brought them down the set. He learned them in like 30 seconds, he being Solomon Hughes, Dr. Solomon Hughes, and was able to get more words in. But more often than not, it's in the capacity as a producer and looking at bringing a scene to life. And sometimes a line won't work, or a line requires a little bit more to it. And between yourself, the actor, and the director, it's a joint process in figuring out what that scene really needs.
Yeah. Okay. So then I guess my last question would be, is there a dream project or a project that you have in your head that's so big, like you want to, like, if tomorrow they said we can do it, let's go? Is there one like that for you, or something you want to work on?
I think the Killadelphia TV show would be the one. It's exciting too. We just got a huge actor cast as the lead, and as James Sangster. We got our James Sangster. That would be the one that I think more than anything else, because I know it better than any. It's the one that's the most personal to me. So the Killadelphia TV show would be that, probably.
I will tell you this: it happened to me only because I did a small webcomic series, and some friends of mine decided to make a short film. It was called Zombie Years. It's like post-apocalyptic zombie thing in Miami. And one of the characters, she got dressed up as one of my characters, this actress, and she had like the scar across her face that I drew on the character. And that would brought me chills. And that was like the thing to see ever. Like, wait, I made you, and now you're walking around. Like,
yeah, it never gets old, man. It never gets old. I mean, I can say even here from on the Lakers show, words that I wrote, we wrote. I remember being in the writer's room for it and hearing actors say them, and it never gets old.
That is so awesome. Well, I guess I'll end it on that note. It never gets old.
It never gets old. I get old, but it doesn't get old.
Get old. We all get old, but
yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barnes. It was really awesome talking to you. Very inspirational. Again, yeah. Now, just so you know, I'm a huge fan now. I was a fan before. I was like, oh, this guy writes some good comics. And now I see all this stuff and I'm like, he does a lot of cool stuff. So I got to look out for it. I'll definitely look out for your Substack. I definitely will look out for Zombie Love. We got your books coming in like crazy. If you're ever in Miami, please feel free to come to our shop.
I will take you up on it. Miami is a fine place to visit. It's a little humid, but it's a fine place. I did what movie? I worked on Ride Along 2 in Miami. And I don't think I've ever sweat more than when I was in Miami.
And
but
just get our fall over here, and it's 80 degrees.
Exactly. But yeah, man, I look forward to it. Don't be surprised if I come through the door.
And if you ever need a comic book artist, I'm an artist too, so I can always send you stuff.
I'll keep you in mind.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barnes.
You're very welcome. You take it easy.
You too.